guys, I'm Missniecytv and I'm here to do a review for Zatima Season 4, Episode 16. The episode picks up where left off and Deja's still beating up Leslie, right? And Deja's really giving her the business. So the guys run over and help. And Zach's first question is like, how did you catch her? So Deja's like, I thought it was you and Fatima getting down this business. But then I said, look out the window. So your cars wasn't there. Deja's like, that's when I caught her and that's when I drug her outside and beat her up. He's like, while I was beating her up, this came off and then she passes Zach the fake belly. And Tony's like, that's really sick. That's when Zach calls the police and Leslie has a nerve to really say, you gonna call the police on your wife? You gonna call the police on your wife? Girl, you are not Fatima. This lady really thinks that she's Zatima and it's crazy. Zach does tell the police, y'all better hurry up before something bad happened to her. Then he tells Nate and Tony to drag her to the back. Zach, I wouldn't be mad if you actually did something to her because it would be self-defense. You were defending your family and yourself. Some time passes and Fatima comes home with Bryce and Zach is telling her everything that happened. And Fatima's like, I'm proud of you. You could have really went to jail. Zach is like, well, I had some higher help. And then that's when Deja comes from around the corner and she's like, hey, partner. This part made me laugh. Fatima moves Zach's face with 2 fingers, and she's like, what is she doing? Deja's like, super Deja to the rescue again, and Fatima's like, help us out. Deja's like, I really beat her up, and Zach is like, well, she gets 2 months free rent. Fatima's like, that must be a great beatdown then. Deja's like, I ate down and stamped at her. Fatima's like, thank you, and Deja's like, what? I didn't hear that. Zach is like, you pushing it. Fatima's like, thank you. Deja's like, so we even now. Fatima's like, don't push it, and Deja's like, you know what, I'ma go. So Deja leaves, and Zach asks how Angela was doing, and Bryce is like, she's doing alright. She gotta stay in the hospital for a little bit longer. Bryce is like, Angela did tell me to come over and get the tea. Is it in the kitchen? Zach is like, you know what, you should be at the hospital with Angela. So Bryce is so green that he actually thought that there was actual tea for him to get. No, that just meant that you were supposed to come over the house, see what was going on, and report back everything to Angela. Fatima does ask where Nate and Tony is, and Zach is like, they're upstairs cleaning up. Fatima's like, I'm gonna go upstairs and see. I need to call the insurance company. And Zach is like, you don't need to do all that. It's alright. You don't need to go upstairs and see. Then something clicks in Fatima, and she's like, the baby's room? That is not a room, y'all. That's corner, but alright. If y'all want to call it a room, it's gonna be a room. So Fatima goes upstairs and Zach is like, I told you I didn't want you to see this. And Fatima's like, why would she do that? I'm like, oh, Leslie really ruined a happy moment in Fatima's life, decorating the baby room and seeing it ready and all that other stuff. Over at the hospital, Bryce and Angela have a conversation and he's like, so you told me to go over Zach Fatima's house and get the tea, but they didn't have it. Angela's like, well, did Zach catch a stalker? And Bryce is like, yeah, actually the next door neighbor stumped her out. Angela's like, that's all you got? Bryce, hand me my phone. It's in my purse. So Bryce goes inside the purse. Haven't you heard when somebody asks for their purse, you just hand the purse to them. You don't go inside it. So he goes inside the purse and he sees the weight loss and he's thinking that Angela's taking them, and Angela's like, no, I just haven't had the chance to throw them away. How'd you get them? Angela's like, I don't want to say, but then she turns around and says she got them from a girl at work and she thought it was worth the risk. It's so dangerous. Angela's like, hand it to me. Bryce is like, no. Angela's like, I'm not going to take them. I just want to throw them away. And Bryce was hesitant at first, but he does pass Angela the trash can and she throws it away. It's like a sign of a new start. Angela's like, now that that's done, I can call Fatima and actually get the full story because you're a horrible storyteller, but you're good at other things. Back over at Zach and Fatima, some time passes and Angela does call Fatima and Zach picks up the phone and Fatima's angry while she's cleaning up the baby stuff. And Zach is like, hey, Angela's on the phone. Fatima basically tells him to answer, so he answered it, and he's like, Angela, can Fatima call you back? So he hangs up the phone, and he tries to calm Fatima down. They have a conversation, and he's like, this is just stuff. I'd rather replace this than replace you. I can only get one you. He's like, I'm glad things happened the way that they did, though, because if they didn't, I was going to call Malachi and see if he could help. And Fatima's like, what? Zach is like, yeah. He's in the FBI, and Nathan thought it was a good idea. Fatima's like, so we taking advice from Nathan now? Zach was like, that was the wrong person to mention. And I'm like, Zach, you think? Her and Nathan barely get along. They're trying to be cordial now. He's like, I wasn't going to tell you, but I decided to tell you because I don't want to keep secrets from you anymore. I'm tired of that. Zach is like, no more crazy secrets. Fatima's like, no more crazy secrets. And she's like, look at us becoming mature parents. Zach is like, we are. Then Fatima starts stressing about the room again. And Zach is like, I don't need you to be stressed. You're already stressed out about Angela. Then Fatima talks about what she would have did if she would have caught Leslie, and Zach is like, I can't have you doing that. Then they talk about the baby room some more and how they're going to replace the stuff and everything. And I'm like, oh, Look at the growth between them. Zach should have really did what he needed to do and take care of Leslie, because Leslie will definitely be back. This is not over. Over at Angela's, we see her come home from the hospital and everybody's there to welcome her home. Angela can't make a sudden movement without Bryce being overbearing and checking on her every 2 seconds. Zach had to even tell him to relax. Angela's like, well, I do have a lot of work to catch up on. Fatima's like, well, that's the last thing you need to be worried about. Zach is like, well, you know we got that thing. Fatima's like, what y'all got going on? Zach, I thought we said we weren't keeping secrets anymore. It's just like I see her going the honest route. Everybody have a little bit of back and forth about that and it's funny banter. Bryce says that they have to do a walkthrough. Angela's like, how long is it gonna be? Bryce is like, it's not that long. So him and Zach leave to go to the walkthrough. Angela's like, I can't wait for the baby shower. And then Fatima puts 2 and 2 together and she's like, so that's what you and Zach been working on. Angela's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Fatima's like, I actually am glad that you were helping him. Angela's like, yeah, because he was trying to have a whole petting zoo up in there. Fatima's like, what? Angela's like, I took care of it. And Fatima's like, I'm just glad that he's not doing everything on his own. Angela's like, yeah, because I told him how basic you wanted. So Angela's like, because you know you basic. And Fatima's like, there's nothing basic about me. Angela's like, there you go stressing. She's like, we don't need to be stressing, you and me both. Fatima's like, well, yeah, you're right. We can let our man handle it. Angela's like, our man. She's like, you know what? I actually told Bryce that I love him last week in the hospital. Fatima's like, yeah, that's a big step, but you were scared then. Fatima's like, are you sure? Angela's like, I'm still scared. Fatima's like, well, just take it slow and see how it goes. Then Angela touches her hair and she's like, you know what? I gotta call Belinda and see if she can get me right. Fatima's like, well, let's go over to her shop since she's not a mobile stylist and the doctor said that you need to walk anyway. Some time passes and the guys make it to the building that they're supposed to be looking at. Preston's telling them the potential of the building and what used to be there. Like it used to be a building full of restaurants and everything. They're really excited about the business and what they could possibly do with the space. That's when Zach gets a call from the inspector and he's basically like, we can't go through with the deal because the inspector looked you up. Zach is told that the inspector is not sure that if it's a legitimate business based on Zach's past. And once Zach gets off the phone, he immediately tells Preston and Bryce what's going on. And they're like, is there anything that we can do? They're like, that's not right. Your past shouldn't have anything to do with it. Bryce is like, I've never heard of anything like this before. And Preston's like, you don't think it's... And Zach is like, I definitely know what it is. Preston's like, did you send all the documents that need to be sent? Zach is like, I sent over everything and he still doesn't want to do it. Zach is like, maybe you could call him and see if he could change his mind. Preston's like, I'll see what I can do. Of course, the inspector's a white man and he saw a black man's name on the bill and he decided to look him up. Zach's past has nothing to do with what he's trying to do now. Over at the barbershop is busy and we see Nate sweeping the floor and he's like, yo, want me to cut some heads? They're like, no. Because the last time you cut somebody head, they left with a George Jefferson. Nate is like, I was just trying to help him embrace what was going to happen anyway. Then he looks up at Tony and Tyrone. He's like, well, if y'all cut some heads, maybe I can pay you back for bailing out Tony. He's like, well, you shouldn't have been taking people's cars and getting tickets in them when you wouldn't have these problems. You know what, pick up that hair. Nate is like, that was Tony that was in jail, not me. Tony's like, watch him out. I would tread lightly because Tony still want to beat you up for what you did. Tony and Tyrone have a conversation and he's like, so you gonna talk to that lady? Tony's like, I don't know. Mr. Tyrone's like, I know the conversation gonna be hard, but you should just tell the truth, everything you told me. Tony's like, I never thought I would be in this type of situation, though. Mr. Tyrone is like, well, it's basically like, you can handle life or life can handle you. Tony agrees to go have the conversation. I'm like, this conversation is not gonna go well. Zach comes in and he sits down in the chair. He's like, the shop is busy. They're like, it's gonna be a minute. Zach is like, you don't even know these. Mr. Tyrone is like, well, you know these people trying to get fired for the weekend. Zach is like, you right. Tony is like, why you look down though? Zach is like, well, we went to go look at the place today, and the inspector said that he can't do it because he looked me up. Tony is like, that ain't right. Zach is like, of course he was an old white man doing this before Jim Crow. Nate is like, you should sue him. Zach is like, what's that gonna do? You're just gonna deny it. Nate is like, well, I'll try to book something, and if he tries to deny me, then you know that he was just doing that just because it was you. Zach is like, I'm gonna let Preston handle it, and Nate is like, okay, but I was still going with my plan. He's like, so you're just doing what I said, but in reverse. He's like, you know what, I can't even worry about that. I got stuff to worry about before the shower. Tony is like, yeah, that is coming up fast, ain't it? Zach is like, yeah. So Zach leaves, but before he leaves, he does tell the guys that he wants to have a poker night. And Nate is like, if you're doing the IOUs, you know I'm gonna be there. And Zach is like, of course we know. Some time passes and Fatima and Angela make it to Belinda's shop and she's like, how you been? Angela's like, well, I just got out of the hospital from a heart attack. Belinda's like, what? And of course she's mad because Fatima didn't call her and tell her. Over at the jail, we see Leslie in jail, and there's a guard walking down and checking all the inmates. And Leslie's like, I'm cold. The guard is like, well, you can get a blanket. Leslie's like, I don't need that. She's like, I heard about you. Are the rumors true? Then she starts touching on the guard, and she's like, maybe I could use you to keep me warm. The guard has the nerve to say, I'll be back to get you. So Leslie gonna use what she got to get where she wanna be, which is outside the jail. This is really getting crazy. Let me know what you guys think about the episode. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn your bell notifications. Bye.